Okay, I think I'm live. So if folks can see me and hear me, if you go to the chat and just let me know, that'd be great. Sorry, just waiting to see if everything's good. Okay, Gaia. Hey, Gaia. It works. Cool. So yeah, so sounds like everybody's on. Everybody's good. You hear me? Good. You can see me. All right, good. So let me get set up here. So I'm going to be turning a few things off so I don't get double feedback and stuff. So I'm going to be testing a few things for the next minute. So bear with me and I'll get started. Okay. Looks like everything's okay. By the way, any echo? Is there any echo in my when I talk? So if someone can say no echo, then I think we're good. Wow, it's Ireland is in the house. Sweet. No echo. Okay, good. Thanks, Megan. All right. Sounds good. So yeah, welcome back to the second day of my second presentation for background design and stuff. For those who may or may not know, yesterday I did my first presentation on story moments and stuff. That's going to be on for probably 2 months. I'm going to leave that for 2 months. I may take it down because I want to kind of refurbish it and add some new stuff and kind of make it a little more polished. This presentation, background design and stuff, will be up for 2 months as well. So enjoy it. There's going to be like over 400 slides and some stuff I want to share with you. So that'll be there. I didn't put in a reminder, but let's see, I think it's 1 o'clock this afternoon. From 1 to 2, I'll be doing a live demo. Actually, it's 1 to 2:30. I'll be doing a live demo. So I'm just going to draw in front of you and just maybe talk, and I might have some music playing, but I'll just kind of share my process as far as like maybe some story moments, maybe background design, or maybe I'll just riff, and I might just have background music playing. But I'll try and put the link up after this presentation and yeah, let you know that. So in any event, I'm going to get started. And this is going to be from 10 to 12. And I might have to cut out about 11:55, but I'll let you guys know. And I'm going to try and save some room for Q&A. So here we go. I'm going to share screen. First of all, thanks so much for coming back and sharing your Saturday morning with me. I hope you guys are having a great Lightbox, and I hope you guys are inspired and so forth. So I'm going to share screen. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're going to start second presentation, and this is called My Journey Toward Background Design. So this is just a quick overview. I'm just going to share pretty much basic knowledge people may know about background design. I'm going to share how I got in, observations I made along the way, and maybe some helpful exercises and what to look for. So anyway, what does a background designer do? Well, pretty much you serve and fulfill the location and prop design needs for a film or project. As well, you convey the mood and emotional beats of the scene and the film through lighting and composition. And I'm going to show and share that with you guys later. So I forgot to put examples here. Now, there's plenty of examples later on. So we'll go with that. So background designer would design pretty much everything that you would see that the characters would walk on or touch. That could be architectural elements, vegetation, natural settings, props, and sometimes the vehicles. And along the way with your art director or your production designer, you establish and introduce the rules of your universe. Pretty much you set out pretty much where you're at, when you're at, as for time in the timeline of the universe that you're in. You kind of establish the technology, the socioeconomic kind of status or realm of your world and so forth that your character is going to be in. What's needed to be a background designer? I kind of made a really quick bullet list of what you should have in your knowledge key. You should have a knowledge of perspective. You should have a composition and a flair for space. You should have a filmic sense. You should have a flair for details. You should have an aptitude for style and adaptability. You should have a keen observation for architectural aesthetics and elements, a flair for lighting to convey emotion, strong sense of values. And color is a plus, but not necessarily required. And what I mean by that is, if you have strong values, when you work in black and whites, if you have very strong values and you can convey the lighting realm of your piece, then color may or may not be necessary. I've been able to make a living being a visual development artist and a background designer for like the last, I don't know, 10 years. And I don't really do too many color. I can do color, but I don't do too much. And I've been able to just kind of do it with studios. What I usually do is I will supply the design, I'll do a tonal painting, and then they'll have painters paint over my painting. And I've been liking to do that because they're way better than me as far as the textures and stuff. So it all depends on the studio working for. Sometimes they have separate folks to do that, to have the tonal values and design and the color. Some require both. But yeah, but it all depends on the studio. So background design, I think I like to say there's two phases to background design. There's the concept design and the production design. What I mean to say is concept design is pretty much the wow. You're selling the idea. And the production is more the translation. So with the wow, the concept design, you're selling design with context to story, and usually influenced by storyboards or by a premise laid out by the art director and the director. For the production, it's more translation of the concepts in the form of like elevation sketches, model packets, and so forth. So you're basically translating the concept so that they can build upon. And this is in terms of like a CG show. So for 2D design is mostly used for TV, not always, but usually. It's usually more graphic and line driven. So there's usually a line, and underneath the line, you'll have layers of colors, maybe a graphic treatment with textures and so forth. 3D is mostly used for feature film. Of course, not always. There's a lot of TV shows now that are using 3D, but they have a consideration of space and volume. There's more sophistication in the information because they need to translate all that detail when they start to build it up. Okay, I want to share how I got my first design gig. It was sometime back in 2001. I was working at Walt Disney TV Animation as a storyboard artist. And from my previous talk, I'd shared that I started in 1997. So I was doing storyboards for various shows. And I was working in Burbank at the Frank G. Wells building on the Disney lot. And it's a great building. It's really cool. This is the entrance to it. This is how it looks like from the back. Really cool building. And inside at the time were there a lot of TV shows. They all had a corner of the building. And I remember Kim Possible would be on one end, The Weekenders would be on another, Fillmore, Recess, and so forth. It was great because we all kind of worked together, and you can always kind of walk around and see what other productions were doing. At the time, Disney Toons also had a few productions in here. Disney Toons was pretty much the unit within the animation division that did direct-to-videos. So they did a lot of twos, Brother Bear 2, Fox and the Hound 2, and so forth. They were all in there as well. Well, what happened was one day, as I was working on one side of the floor, I noticed on another section of the floor, they were working on a new production. So I was really curious, and I looked up, and I was like, oh my gosh, really? What I realized, they were working on Kronk's New Groove. So they were basically working on a sequel to Emperor's New Groove, which I loved. Loved that movie so much. So when Colin Stimson was the production designer, and he designed the first movie, and he was going to be the production designer of the second movie. And I was really excited. So I went in and I talked to the producer, and I said, hi, my name's John. I would love to be considered as a designer for your show. And she was really nice. She was pretty much in the nicest way saying like, well, thank you, but we have all our needs met. And besides, we're looking for more experienced designers and so forth. So at the time I was just a storyboard artist. I didn't really have professional design experience. Even though I was sharing all my enthusiasm, they were looking for seasoned folks, which is understandable. But in the nicest way, she was pretty much saying, it's okay. No need to apply. So anyway, I kindly said, well, thank you so much for your time, and I left. So 2 months had passed, and I noticed a few things. I noticed that during the 2 months, they had gone through several designers. Either they quit, they were fired, or they just didn't work out. Anything. Anyway, it just they were just kind of having some problems as far as production, fulfilling designers. So I was listening in on my ear and like, I had an idea. So the idea was, well, I'll just go ahead and maybe in a few pages, I'll just do some rough drawings of the Emperor's New Groove. I'll do some houses and locations in that style, just to kind of show that I could do it. So what happens is late one night, I think I stayed up till 7 that night. People usually leave the office at 6. I stayed a little late, just to make sure no one was there. And I went into their meeting room where they would go in and have staff meetings. And I put these pages on the table. I put my name and my phone number on there, and I just left it there. So 2 days later, I get a call from the producer, and she says, "Can we have a talk?" I said, "Sure." So she calls me in, and we have a meeting, and she says, "Well, you know what? She did see the papers I left, and she was quite impressed, and she asked me, would you be interested in working on the show as a designer, background designer?" And of course, I said yes. And that was the start of my design gig. Prior to that, I just worked in storyboards, which was awesome, but I've always been fascinated with background design. So anyway, that's how I got in. So just to encourage folks, if there's an opportunity, or if for any reason you can just showcase your work to somebody to get a response or anything, you take it, you go for it. In my case, it worked, and thank God it did, because I was able to work with Colin Stimson, and I worked with the art director, Mary Locatell. She was awesome, and I learned so much. That was an education. On the show, I had access to all the art of stuff, and this is just some of the work that I saw. It was impressive. It just blew my mind away. Kevin Adams and Kevin Nelson, Marcelo Bignoli's work. Oh my gosh, stuff was great. So yeah, I'm going to share all this, some more work later on. Yeah, Paul Felix work. So anyway, I want to share early influences and inspirations when I started designing. So early on, I was always fascinated by Calvin and Hobbes. I loved Bill Watterson's work. I love the simplicity of the design. I love his storytelling. That really greatly influenced me. Early on, I was also influenced by Tom Enriquez's work. And Tom Enriquez is a storyboard artist at TV, and he worked at Disney Feature. And I was really influenced by his work. Some of the stuff is in The Art of Lion King, but I loved his staging, his composition, his looseness, just the way he can storytell is beautiful. I was greatly influenced by it. Another person I was inspired by was Andy Gaskell, who actually now I'm fortunate to work with on the Garfield movie. His stuff is amazing. So cinematic, so simple, so dramatic. I love how he can just carve space and just storytell with simple composition. Some of his work. This is something he did for Hercules. This is stuff he did for a Goofy movie, which I shared on another presentation. Yeah, he's a great storyteller. Beautiful. So anyway, I'm going to pass through these. Let's see. Another person who influenced me was Jim Schlenker. His stuff was awesome. I saw Jim's work when I was at Disney TV. He also worked in features. His stuff was amazing. Awesome. Another artist was John Puglisi. John's now doing like storyboards for Sony. He was on the Spider-Verse, but he did a lot of work for Disney Feature in the form of layouts. And this is some of the works he did for Tarzan. Really beautiful. I just love how he can just, set dress everything. And, he's leaving kind of impressions of who actually works and lives there. And then Paul Felix as well. Always loved Paul's work. This is some of the stuff he did for Aladdin TV. This is for the TV series. And then eventually he also worked on the Tarzan. I believe Tarzan was actually a Disney TV project that they were going to do more in like a little featurette, and it just impressed the folks there so much that they moved the production over to features. So, but Paul was doing early stuff like this. Really cool, great storytelling, just awesome. So I'm just going to zip through. This is stuff he did for Lilo and Stitch. I love how he can carve out space with, he's carving out negative space. So he's leaving kind of like these little cavities of light. So that way the character can be spotlighted in there. Really nice. Dark over light, light over dark. I love how he can have space kind of bleed through very softly. Some parts are soft, some kind of bleed through, and they kind of, lead the eye into soft passages. Really nice. And yeah, some of Kevin Nelson's work that he did for Emperor's New Groove. I'm going to zip through, and Loic Restaud's work and Marcella's work. It's really cool. And Bill Peet was always influenced, or not influenced, but inspired by Bill Peet's work. And was also introduced by some friends into European comics, Belgian comics. And Spirito and Fantasio was awesome. There are many versions, many artists who took a hand in it. They're all great. But I was really inspired because, I was doing storyboards at the time, and I was like looking at these like, oh my God, these look like storyboards, but they're so rich and cinematic, just full of life. And I just love also just the quality of line and just how beautifully drawn they were. Anyway, this really inspired me. So let me talk a little bit about style. And these are just observations I made while working in background design. So style is pretty much like an aesthetic look and design of the film. So it can be an aesthetic choice. Actually the director or art director will say like, well, I like this style of design. We're going to go with that. Sometimes it can be based on economic choice where, you don't have a lot of budget. So you want to try and make it as simple as possible with what you have, with what the budget can supply. So maybe you keep things line drawn, and then the characters are simply designed and so forth. So it could be an economic choice. So let me talk about caricature, because caricature, in my opinion, is kind of like one of the driving forces of design. So caricature is like an exaggeration or minimizing of iconic features. So in those features can be in terms of proportion, line, detail, and I said form again. So yeah. So let's look at this, examples. So for caricature, you're pretty much looking at iconic features, in this case, like the face, and you can either exaggerate them or minimize them. So you can see here, they're squashing the jaw, maybe they're really pushing out more of the forms of the face and so forth. Anyway, just to kind of, you're kind of caricaturing the form. So it's identifiable, you know who it is, but you're just highlighting certain features. So if you look at certain celebrities, you can kind of say, well, what's the most iconic feature of a certain individual? So for example, for Conan O'Brien, an iconic feature might be his hair. So for David Letterman, an iconic feature might be his teeth. He has a gap in his tooth, and also his hair. For Michael Jackson, might be his glasses and his eyes. So with that, you can kind of caricature certain designs to certain looks. So these are just 4 productions I just put up, and they all have trees, but they have different ways of how they stylize and caricature the trees. For Brother Bear is very, it's not really a hyper real, but it leans more on the real world, but it's more in a painterly way. So you're going to get a lot of details as far as the vegetation and the flowers and so forth, and the bark, but it's done in a very painterly way. For Hilda, you're going to get things a lot more caricatured. So you're going to get things that are simplified to a shape, and you're going to have accents of what maybe a leaf could be. Maybe a leaf isn't so much detail, but maybe certain leaves are caricatured to create like a line rhythm and so forth. For Powerpuff Girls, they have that classic cross section that was kind of influenced by early UPA films, where it's kind of like you get like an apple and you cut it in half, and then you can see the vein work and the seeds. In this case, you're just cutting through a cross section, and you can reveal the branch work and the bark and so forth. So it's very simplified. It's basically simplified to a shape. And Gravity Falls, pretty much the same way. It's very simplified, but forms are very caricatured, a lot of asymmetry. And then underneath that line, you have a lot of texture, glints of lighting that they would probably do in adjustments and so forth. Just all beautiful. They're all, they're all trees, all, have a different take and treatment to it, and to its own style. So think about when you're designing, it's not so much making things hyper real. You just want to make them believable. So you want to have the viewer believe the world that you're in, but you can still caricature the elements in that world. So for example, say a Parisian Boulevard, it could be this take from the Mickey shorts, where the buildings are caricatured to certain shapes, things are elongated. The detail is pretty much simplified to a form or to kind of a repeating rhythm and so forth. So you can see the streets, how the crosswalks and the stones and so forth. Even the trees are all caricatured. This is Florence, Italy, beautiful place. But here it's caricatured by Peabody and Sherman. Again, it's a very recognizable feature. We know what it is, but the elements themselves are caricatured, elongated, simplified. Another example, this is my home city of San Francisco, and in the background is Coit Tower. But here it's caricatured by Kevin Dark Big Hero 6. Beautiful. We have iconic features of the Coit Tower. We know what those are. We have the running streets, very iconic of San Francisco, the streetcar. But Kevin here did just an awesome job of just simplifying the forms, the building, and caricaturing little accents and details. Just really nice. So, think of style as kind of like this slide bar, where on one end is reality, things as what we know and see in reality. We see the forms that they are in and the details. And then on one side is the whimsical side, where things can kind of go abstract and just really get distorted. So you can just slide, if you create this kind of slider, you can kind of slide back and forth details as needed to kind of build whimsy or just build things more in a more playful form. Here's some examples, great examples. From Despicable Me. You can see how that car, the upper part of that car, the upper cabin is just really elongated. You can see really built up forms, stuff. It's a great piece from Robert Kondo from Monsters University. Really nice. I love how Robert just paints and he just simplifies the chunkiness of things. And you can see the contrast, the chunkiness of the foundation of the brick and the roofs, but then you get all these tiny buildings underneath, and they have this repeating pattern of like small windows leading to longer, bigger windows. Really beautiful. It's from Jamie's Got Tentacles. Really cool show. Very fluid. Very nice. So one thing about working in design, it's all about shapes. Just keep things in shape form as far as building up. Shapes that work with asymmetry, and then you kind of accompany that with line and a sense of all this working together. You get some really unique shapes happening. These are just great examples. Really nice. It can be very flat. You can apply a flatness to it, but everything is, you have shapes within shapes, you have patterns within shapes and so forth. Very strong sense of silhouette and variety. Really nice. Just examples from Home on the Range, Open Season, Kim Possible, Samurai Jack, such a great show. Just really fun designs. Love these. Asymmetry meeting shape, meeting rhythm with certain accents of line. Really nice. And then, there's a texture underneath it. This is an old Disney short, Pigs is Pigs, really great design. Tom Orab, great designer from the 50s. He worked with UPA and early Disney films. Great sense of style. If you have a chance, look at Tom Orab's work. Really whimsical, really playful, really nice. Danny Argo's work that he did for Up. I just love how simplicity it is. Everything has like chunkiness to it. But just beautifully working together. So think about shapes is like, especially when you're working, this is an example of using character designs. So you have, say, if you want to create like a lineup. For if you're doing character designs for a lineup, what you want to do is the whole goal is creating a lineup where all the shapes are unique, but they all feel like they live in the same universe. And the way to do that is to kind of have repeating features that they each can carry that kind of unifies them together. For example, these bats could be unified by just the shape or the style of their ears, along with the simple use of features for their bodies. You know, it could be simple shapes, and the shapes can have variation and so forth. Some are fluid and have a curve. Some are fairly squat. Some have, you know, just tapered forms. But they're all unified by features, in this case, the ears. But that's a nice way of kind of unifying groups. And you can do that with buildings and other things, like say like cars and so forth. It's just a nice way of kind of unifying pretty much different characters, different elements within the same universe. These are just examples of great lineups. Beautiful. The Octonauts. This is great. The Octonauts. It's a great simple show. Beautiful. You see these different characters, different heights and so forth, but they're all unified basically by the shape of the head, the eyes, but little features kind of differentiate them. You know, the nose, snout, flippers, how short their legs are and so forth, but they all work together. So they're all unique to a certain extent, but they all fit in the same world. Muppets is an awesome show to look at as far as style. It's just simplicity of it, just beautiful shapes, but they get so much out of them. Really nice. Lineup for Robin Hood, Megamind, Dam Keeper, The Sandlot. Yeah, it's live action, but you can see the variation, you know, which you know can influence 2D, 3D design. Okay, so yeah, a major difference between 2D and 3D design. 3D design is a response to light. You know, it's a sense of volume and space because they're more sculptural. And these are just the basic principles of lighting. You know, usually you have a shape within space, and when light hits it, there's a highlight, an incident highlight or a specular highlight hitting pretty much the direct. It's the direct position of where light's hitting it. And then from there, as you go away from light over the form, you're going to get a core shadow, and then you're going to get a shadow light, and then you're going to get a cast shadow, and you're going to get some reflected light on the opposite bottom, usually bouncing up. So you're going to get all these kind of areas of light hitting a shape, which kind of builds its construction in light as it responds to light, I should say. So knowing that, you can kind of apply that to a 2D design. You know, 2D design is usually flat and graphic, but then if you kind of know where the light source is, you can somehow create same highlight, drop shadows and so forth, and start shoot for a more sculptural look. These are examples of 2D going into 3D. This is from Popeye. This is from Peanuts. This is a maquette from Up of Muntz. Really nice. Pokio, great show. Okay, so I want to talk about shape psychology really quick. So shape psychology is pretty much how you can use shapes, but when you have shapes working together, when you're designing features, you can somehow imply a certain psychology to the shape. They're implying certain feelings or certain attributes, psychologically, emotionally, but it's all about context and how you use them together and how they're used in the scene. So for example, and these are all just general attributes, and they're not specific to anything, they're just general. But usually a circle can give the attributes of something that's round, soft, young, and passive. For a square, it's usually hard, rugged, older, and slow. You know, because a circle can roll off, it's soft, it kind of implies something you can kind of squish. A square is more rugged, it's like it kind of gives you like it's made of hard construction and so forth. And maybe it doesn't roll, it kind of maybe drags along the floor. And then there's the triangle. Now it's based on how the triangle is seen, but if it's on its point, it kind of creates instability because it feels like it's teetering. If it's on its base, it's more stable. So, you know, it's not going to roll. If it's on its side where the point is pointing right or left, it kind of implies it's going in a certain direction or like it's pointing to something. So it has more of like this motion, this activity happening. So knowing these things, we can kind of use that as far as building worlds, or at least suggesting certain attributes to certain areas. So for example, for Wreck-It Ralph, there were 3 worlds in Wreck-It Ralph. There's actually 4 worlds if you want to, include the human world. But for the worlds in the gaming, the Nicelanders were suggested by a square shape. So they had this up and down. It was a tribute to the 8-bit world. It's kind of like older technology for gaming. Even the architecture was very squarish, very playful, very simplified. The characters themselves were very pudgy, but had a squarish form, and they kind of moved up and down. For Heroes Duty, it's a very aggressive game, and very warlike. So things were very aggressive. So things, whereas in the hyperreal, even the color scheme had a very greenish grade to it. But everything was war and aggressive and actiony and fast moving. So there's a lot of triangular motifs happening in that world. And then you contrast that with Sugar Rush. Sugar Rush is more, it's where the cars would race, but they were raced in this candy land, and everything had a soft plushness to it. There were orbs and soft shapes and things that were made out of soft construction, the candy and so forth. So all these working together, you could build out the different worlds using all based on a shape. Same thing can be done for a DreamWorks home. Really nice. And then you can contrast that with characters working together. So you have Eve and Wally, Scar and Mufasa. Scar is very thin and pointy and angular, versus Mufasa's, strong, rugged jawline, and his snout's very wide. And look at the mane as well. Mufasa's mane, his hair, very full and just full of body. And Scar's is very thin and wispy. So you see the contrast, and from that contrast, they have uniqueness, but they still have same attributes. Same for Mulan, Aladdin, and so forth. So shapes can distinguish characters from each other and give them personality. And this is a great lineup from Aladdin. They beautifully stand out, but they're all shape driven. It's all about shapes. I'm going to keep repeating that. It's all about shapes. These are great examples. Just Chris Sasaki of his witches, beautiful. This is Ricky Nerva's really beautiful loose lineup for Up. There's the characters, the dogs, really nice. From Inside Out, again, Chris's work. Chris is awesome. Great. So let me talk a little bit about composition and camera. So camera, there's many ways to imply visually what the camera is, what you're looking at, how you're looking at it from the position and so forth. And I'm going to use Hans Bacher's examples. I was going to do it myself, but Hans is awesome, and he had done this in a book. So forgive me, Hans, I'm using it because it's such a great way to look at it. If you, by the way, if you have a chance, look at Hans Bacher's link, and they're online. They're just great. So anyway, these are just certain camera angles that you can consider. There's the establishing or the wide shot. It's pretty much where the camera is wide. So you have your characters are usually small in the frame, and you're showing what's around them. You're showing their world, their locations, how far they are from each other, distance-wise, and so forth. So this is your wide establishing shot. And then you have medium shots where obviously you're closer. A medium shot can be, say, from the waist up, or to a certain extent, depending on the characters, it can be their whole body. Then you have close-ups. Close-ups are usually from the shoulders up. So you're focusing more on their facial expressions, what they're thinking. Then you have over-the-shoulder shots. That's usually when one of the characters or there's an element closer to the frame, and then you're focusing on the character or the element on the back. So it's kind of like a two-shot, but one element is closer to camera. That's reverse over the shoulder. And then as far as position of the camera, there's eye level. So the camera is eye level to the characters. There's a down shot, also known as a security camera shot. So the camera is up above looking down at the characters or at something on the set. Then there's an up shot, also a worm's eye view. So the camera can be really low looking up. And in some instances, if this is based looking up at a hero, it can be also known as a hero shot. And then there's points of view. The points of view is actually you're looking through the eyes of one of the characters. So you're looking at their world from their point of view, POV. All right, so knowing what a camera can do, you can imply certain feelings. You can showcase what you're looking at through a story from someone's point of view. We're going to look at a scene from Gladiator, and this is a scene about 40 minutes in. And look at it. I want you to ask yourself while you're looking at it, what is the position of the camera? What are certain things you observe? And ask yourself the POV. And at the end, ask yourself, why were the choices that the director made as far as showing what he did? Okay, this is directed by Ridley Scott. So we're going to look at it once, and then I'll go back and I'll showcase a few things. So here we go. Okay, so let me put down the volume. And I'm going to go back and we're going to talk about this. So what you first do is you open up on strong verticals, and the shot is composed almost symmetrically. You got strong verticals, and then what you see is you see two groups of folks or prisoners, and they're symmetrically positioned. They're all looking at each other, but there's one individual that stands out, and his back is to camera, but the camera pulls in on him. And he's doing something. We're not sure what he's doing. He's maybe carving something. Okay, then we cut to the next shot. So now we have a reverse angle. And now we reveal who this character is. It's Maximus. So again, still symmetrical, but now he stands up. So now he's different than anybody else. He's standing up, walking the camera. And usually anytime someone is positioned symmetrically in the center, they're commanding attention. They're the ones, they're this focal point. They're the ones that are kind of guiding the space. So here he is. He's looking keen and sternly at camera, walking. Now, when he's walking, what's happening? Okay. Oh, let me go back. Let me play that again. Sorry about that. So here, I'll just hold my hand on it. So here he's walking. And as he's walking, this is his POV. This is his point of view. So we see him as he's walking. And what's happening? Well, the prisoners are saluting him. So right away, if we just walked into this movie 40 minutes late and we see this and we didn't know Maximus was a general, we're asking ourselves, well, why are they doing this? Well, they're saluting him because we know he's a badass general and he's a warrior and he's very well respected. So this is his POV. We still have symmetry. Okay, whose POV is this? Well, I'm assuming it's from the POV of the soldiers that are sitting down. So he stands up and you see him kind of in this negative space. There's light behind him and he's looking up. So it's slight upshot, kind of a hero shot. There he goes, still stern. And he just walks across. Now we cut into this darkness and then we go into light and that we see in the light this negative space of these really strong, scary looking guys. So this is Maximus POV, opens the door and reveal these four really scary dudes. And it's at eye level. So we're looking at Max's point of view still. So we're seeing this, four scary guys, all centrally positioned. But then we do this. We cut to Maximus. It seems to be eye level, but look at the camera position. The camera's low. And now we're looking up at Maximus. And then we cut back to eye level these guys. There's actually now 5 characters, and they take a step back. Have you noticed they kind of take a step back, like, whoa, like a wave just shot through them. And then you cut back to Maximus. The camera seems to be lower, and you get this hero shot, and you get the spikes behind him, the rose petals falling, and so forth. He looks up, other parts, and then you back to an eye level. Now this is camera level from the warriors, and you, yeah, Maximus centered. So looking at this, the camera moves. You know, there's a lot of things telling you information, but at the same time, it's giving you a certain emotion. An emotion of maybe what the characters are feeling, or emotion that we're kind of anticipating. So I show this because it's like, well, why did Ridley Scott choose to show Maximus like this toward the end? Well, basically to showcase that Maximus is badass and he's a giant. Not physically, but he's a great warrior. And we know that he's going to kick ass. So again, choices and selection of camera can really imply more interest, more storytelling into the frame. So let me go to the next thing. So observation. As you're designing, it's all about observation. It's what you see and the information that you see and the information that it's giving you as far as feelings and emotion. So for example, when you see something, you want to ask yourself, who lives and works here? What informs us? What's the DNA left in the room that tells us who was there? So such information can give us personality traits, physical traits, likes or dislikes. It can tell us maybe a socioeconomic status of the character that was in the room and any kind of psychological traits. Again, it gives us an emotion of the room and pretty much, do we want to be there? So here are some examples. So if you look at this room, what's the information we have? Well, let's see, kind of a small living room. You see pictures on the wall and so forth. A lot of mixed, you know, the texture of the fireplace mixed in with a dark red wall on the left. And then you have this really dark, kind of highly patterned rug. But then look at the lighting. You got a lot of strong shadows. It's almost like the lights are off. I'm not sure if it's intentionally or not, but it's really hard to see. You know, a lot of shadows. And look at this room. So when you ask yourself, who lives here and what's happening? You see all the clutter in the middle. You're not sure if this is intentional. Did something happen? Is there an issue of space and so forth? Not sure. But you know, you see the walls that are torn. So maybe, you know, maybe they're not so rich. Maybe they don't have enough money to upkeep the walls. Or maybe there was a recent damage. Maybe there was a storm that happened. Maybe this was after an earthquake or something. But anyway, all these things kind of inform you as to maybe what's happening, what happened, who lives there, how they live, a certain event, something. All of these things inform you. So basically, you know, look at things and observe and see what it tells you and what you're feeling. And there's a reason for all this. This is the dorm. Really nice. You get to see what they like and dislike. Versus this. This person, I have a feeling, has some money. They have a sense of art and style. You know, things, you know, they have this recliner that leans back and they have like an ottoman and so forth. Really nice. This is a kid's room, but obviously this is a lucky kid. Someone who has money. Really nice. So this is a cool room. You know, just observe the details, look at the materials. You may want to ask yourself, well, you know, can I afford this? You know, is this someone who has means to money? Is this someone who is creative, has a flair for style? Or are they just working within a limited, you know, limited finances and making the best of space? Here's a dorm room. Yeah, I'm going to ask yourself, you know, is this maybe a new school or an old school? This tells me it might be an old school because if you look at the mason bricks, you know, very thick, they almost look like a prison. So this kind of suggests like it's an older university, very tight space. The person living here is making the best of that space, but you can see on their wall how they dress it with things that they like. Really nice. Person's into maybe animation, superheroes, and so forth. They have a backpack there, things that a student would need. So yeah, really nice. And this looks like an older folks home. So, the light scheme is very light, in light colors, very pastel. They're kind of maybe trying, in a hard space, they're trying to create like a light atmosphere with the colors. You get this daintiness of the features of the props that are in it. Like it seems to have like this kind of Victorian, very early style to it. Um, things are made out of glass, and then you see the texture of the wallpaper in the hallway. So this kind of tells me it's an older person. So when we see all this, when we dissect the information, we can kind of slightly reverse engineer it. So basically, once we kind of know what's in there and it tells us this information, then when we start to design something, then we have that idea in mind when we build things up. If we can build them down, we can build them up. So knowing this, we can look at such pieces like Ken Anderson that he did for 101 Dalmatians, and you can see like, well, how would you set dress something that is more keen to the character? So we know he's a musician, he's a bachelor. What tells us he's a bachelor? Well, he's not so keen on having things so tidy. Things are just kind of stacked into each other. You can see the stacking of dishes on the piano. You can see the mantle, how it's just full of stuff. You see the books on the right. Everything is tight and enclosed, but it's comfortable to him. But again, all the information that's being told to you. Again, John Puglisi's work. You want to ask yourself, these are, I'm going to show you the 4 sets that he did for Tarzan, but you want to ask yourself, well, who in Tarzan is in this space? Well, looking at the details information, you see a microscope, you see bottles, science bottles, thick books, maps, and so forth, flasks. This kind of tells me this is maybe a scientist, someone who is into the sciences, and he's having things that he can look at as far as for work. Okay, over here, this looks like it's a woman's room. You see dresses, you see mirrors, and so forth. You see more of a nice, elegant feature as far as the furniture, and even the board. It has this very nice daintiness to it. Really nice. This could be another take on a scientist. Look at the thickness of that telescope. Then you have things overlap like ropes, and so forth. The globe. Another take on a possible scientist. Really nice. I see the frog in the bottom corner. Very cool. Now this looks like someone who's a warrior, maybe a hunter. Why? Well, you see the heads of the animals. You see swords, the weaponry. You see the kind of like a cheetah skin on the desk. Very aggressive. So right away, the personality DNA tells us a little more about who lives here. Again, when you see things, the background design kind of informs you as far as who lives there or what they do, their work, but also informs the feeling and the mood. Let's look at the scene from Ratatouille. This is a scene of Egon's office. Of Ego's office. Now, as you look at it, what clues tell you who Ego is and what he does? So here we go.
What is it, Ambrister?
Gusteau's.
Finally closing, is it?
No.
More financial trouble?
No, it's
Announced a new line of microwave egg rolls. What? Spit it out.
It's come back. It's popular.
I haven't reviewed Gusteau's in years.
No, sir.
My last review condemned it to the tourist trade.
Yes, sir.
I said, Gusteau has finally found his rightful place in history right alongside another equally famous chef, Monsieur Boyardee.
Touché.
That is where I left it. That was my last word. The last word.
Yes.
Then tell me, Ambrister, how could it be popular?
So great scene from Ego. But let me point out certain things that kind of tell me a little more about Ego. First off, you open up on a self-portrait of him. on his personality, very dry. He's centered, you crawl out and you reveal the space. And look at the lighting, very dark. And there he is centered at his office. Everything has a nice daintiness to it. You get this small shaft of light that's filtering through the windows. And then you cut to this typewriter, has a skull motif. So basically, it could be a harsh guy, someone to be feared, reveal his assistant coming in. Then you have this nice down shot of his office that looks like a coffin. So it underscores kind of like ego and his personality, someone who likes to imply bad things or likes to give death, so to speak. So there he goes, walks over, he's closer, reveals the information. And then they have this banter, this talk. So really nice. But anyway, information like that, if you look at the choices that were made by the art director and the director and designers, you can see how they kind of underscore a certain feeling or emotion that they're trying to give to a certain character or to a certain situation or scene. Okay, so let me quickly look at lighting. So lighting can be used for clarity to showcase a focal point. And again, you can underscore the emotion or the mood of the scene. And let's look at examples. When you're looking at this, look at the negative space. And when I say by negative space, look at it in terms of dark over light, light over dark. And the dark over light could be the character that's in dark over light background, or light over dark is maybe the character is in light over a dark space, so that the character or the element pops out. So it's more clear to see that person, someone in silhouette in the scene. So here are nice examples. Light over dark, dark over light. The character on the left is dark over light, and the character on the right is light over dark. She is dressed in black and the background behind her is dark, but her face pops out because it's reflected in light. This is a nice Edward Hopper piece. The character is positioned in such a way that they're kind of in the middle of this kind of like this light shape behind her. So the back of her is dark over light. The front of her body, her face, is light over dark. This is a great photography. You have someone walking through darkness, but there's a shaft of light and he pops out. So he's in shadow, so he's dark over light. Classic scene from Close Encounters, dark over light. So when you ask yourself, where does your eye go? And why? Here are some examples. This is from Alien. So basically your eye goes usually where there's the greatest contrast of light. And it's usually where your main character is, or basically where the center of interest is in the scene. So this is nice. The gentleman on the left is dark over light. And then Tom Hanks, he's like a secondary read. He's also dark over light. A lot of faces in the room, but where does our eye go to? Well, where the greatest contrast of light is. In this case, it's that glint of sunshine hitting the woman's brim on her hat. Nice white scene. We have a big train. We have 3 individuals, and everything's kind of laid out in this dark valley. But the light is hitting these certain characters, and you can see the rim tones of them. So basically, our eye goes there because they're in the shaft of light, and they kind of pop out. Their accents. You can use shape forms to kind of build out compositions, and then also use contrast of dark and light to pop out a character. And Peter Pan, strong silhouettes. This is a nice piece. I don't know who did this, but it was great. The character is popping out, and you see these 3 levels of values. We have the ground itself, and on the left, we have this kind of nice bank of buildings and stores, but they're all, if you blur your eye, they're all in the same light value. So it kind of groups them together, and they're kind of in this middle ground, and they're on the same plane as the tree on the right. So they all have the same value. So they kind of create this one plane, this mid plane. And then in back of that, behind the tree on the right, there's this other building, but it has a lighter value. So that kind of drops off to us to further back. And then way in the back, you have another group of buildings, and even behind that, you have what looks like a bank of trees. And just the subtle treatment of values can help indicate depth, things dropping back, and how the eye responds to it. And usually, most always, your eye responds to the greatest value of lights and darks. Now, in the middle is the negative space of light, and then you put your character in darkness, so he pops right out. Talk about hierarchy. Hierarchy is basically when you have a lot of elements, a lot of characters in the building, and how you organize the lighting and the composition and the crispness, so to speak, of details, you can kind of tell the viewer what to see first, second, third, fourth, and so forth. So if we look at this example, this is from The Conformist, we have 3 characters. So ask yourself, what do you see first? What do you see second? And who do you see third, and why? Well, I would imagine you would probably, my guess is you would see the woman on the left first. The reason is she's closest to camera. She has the greatest contrast of light and dark, and we see her details very sharp and crisp. Okay, and she's bigger. And then the second would be the gentleman on the far right. And why? Because, well, he's slightly blurred, but he's also dark over light because the background he's behind him is light, but he's in soft focus. So we don't really see his details so much. So if we were just to look at him and the woman, she responds more. She's more crisp, and he's second. And then the third character is the priest in the middle. And he kind of drops off because his values are, there's less contrast, I should say, between him and the lighting around him. So he pops out, but in context to all 3, he's like a third read. So knowing this, how you can manipulate light and shadows and so forth, you can kind of dictate to the viewer what you want to see first, second, and third. Here's a great scene or an example from Munich. A lot of bodies, but who do you see first, second, and third? So some people might say the gentleman standing in front of the window might be a focal point, but I would say that would be a second read. I think the first read would be the gentleman sitting down, his back to us on the left at the table. The reason he's on the thirds, and everybody's looking at him. In silhouette, and then you have the gentleman standing, who I said against the light. He would be a second read. Maybe a third read might be, it could be the individual on the far right, or it could be just some of the gentlemen on the table. But anyway, it's a hierarchy of what you see first and second and third based on positioning, lighting values, and in context to the scene. This is a great scene from Oliver Twist. A lot of individuals. But who do you see first and second and third? I would say you go to the judge, who's somewhat on the center, and he is light against dark. And I would see the second read would be who he's talking to, would be the gentleman who is standing in the blue cape and the hat. His head is framed against the window, so his head is dark over light. Okay, and then who would you see third? Well, it could be the gentleman on the far left, who seems to be looking on. He might be a court reporter. Or it could be the gentleman that's sitting next to the judge. He kind of gets lost because he has his head kind of hidden behind a newspaper, but he does pop out because one side of that newspaper is in light. But anyway, it's the hierarchy and how you put things in context to each other where you can see. This is a great shot from Leighton Hickman, great artist, from The Croods. If you look at this, there's 3 layers or 3 planes of information. You have the foreground on the far left. We can see the detail of the leaves, and then in the midground, on the thirds on the right, we see the family of the Croods. They're playing, and then what you see behind them is a backdrop of trees, but you see a slight face. So you don't really see that face at first. It gets hidden because it's in the same value at the background. What you should see is the family first, because they pop out. There's greatest contrast of them against the light behind them. The foreground, your eye goes past it because it's in one mass group in the same value. So you kind of see the family first, and the second read would be the creature. But really beautiful, really nice. This is a nice opportunity to create like a little interest and kind of like moment, like, oh, the family, they're having a good time, but unbeknownst to them, but that we know is that there's a creature looking on. Okay, so again, lighting can be used for emotion, for contrast, and you can use it as metaphors. Here's some great examples. This is a scene from The Conformist. This is when 2 characters are in the scene, and just seconds later, one of the characters closes the windows, and you get really stark contrast of lighting and shadows. Examples. This is great. Robert Kondo, awesome artist. He was designing Sunnyside. So during the day, Sunnyside is this wonderful, uh, playful area for kids. But at night, to the toys, it could be something totally different. So it has a different context. Lighting can be used for metaphors. This is this great scene on for Shawshank Redemption. It's we have Red on the left, and we have Andy Dufresne on the right. He's on the ground. So right here is when Andy kind of suggests that that he's just been in solitary confinement for 2 months and he's losing hope. And there's Red there. And what's great is this is the beginning of the scene. So they have a face off, and Red does end up sitting next to Andy, and then Andy they swap positions where now Andy is going to be where Red is, and it's the metaphor of light. Who's in lightness and who is in darkness. Andy chooses to be in hope, so at the end of the scene he's going to be dark against light. He's going to be in sunlight. So light can be a metaphor for hope, for positivity, and then Red's going to be in shadows, and so he's not in hope. And earlier in the movie, they had a whole thing about hope and where Red shuts down, like, hope is a dangerous thing to have. But just how lighting can underscore metaphors and statements in the film, or what you see. This is great. This is a scene from Pride and Prejudice. So this is a moment when the young hero, she feels like she's trapped in her circumstances. And you can use the lighting to suggest that, how she's trapped in this triangular light shape. Again, you can want to strive for poetic compositions using either shadows or reflections. Here's some great examples. Really nice. This is a great shot from American Beauty. In the beginning of the movie, we have our hero, Kevin Spacey, who he works in an office. He hates his job. And what further underscores how he hates his job is you see the data on the screen. It looks like prison bars. So it all has this kind of metaphor where, he's a prisoner of his job. Great silhouettes, great use of shadows, and so forth. So let me talk about story moments. So part of the job, what you do is when you're a background designer is creating story moments. And that's when you design usually a character in a situation using your design. And you're using, you're doing that in context to the story. So you're selling the design with story in mind. So when I think about story, you think about information. This is what I think about. I think about information. I think about the camera and composition. I think about space and the needs of the action for that scene. For example, if there's going to be a fight in a room, and then one of the characters is thrown out of the window, well, I have to make sure that there's room for a fight to happen, and also I have to put a window, and I have to figure out, well, where is that window going to be placed? And I think about the camera. I'm looking at the storyboards, or at least I kind of have to figure out where that action is going to take place and so forth. And then from that, I also look at light sources, the lighting, because that's going to inform how I'm going to light this. Think about things as far as space. The way to achieve less flatness is adding foreground elements, background elements, and elements within, just so that way it has a depth. You can use props to vignette the space. You can have props near your hero in the midplane, and then you can have backdrops of information going back and back. This was a great example I used early on in my earlier presentation of Mickey going through a cityscape. This is all done by Paul Felix. But you can see how different ways Mickey is shown, the different camera positions, how you can use different props to frame Mickey. You can use lighting, light over dark, dark over light. All suggest different ways how we're feeling Mickey in the scene. Acting. Usually when acting, I shared, you want to share things that are quite simple, try and achieve just a quick read of what the character is doing, usually by a strong silhouette, clear action. And it's all about the focal point, where you're seeing the character happen. So we have, to achieve a less flat space, maybe instead of having them sideways, maybe they're more 3/4 to the camera, or maybe they're more over the shoulder shot. Maybe try and include two bits of information together. So rather than cutting on one angle of one element and then cutting to another angle of a reaction, maybe you imply both of them. You're kind of stacking the information together. So we have something in the foreground and then something in the background responding, or vice versa. Use grids when you're starting out. Grids again are just a nice way of simplifying the topography and the camera angle, what you're looking at. You can show depth by using foreground and backgrounds and framing and vignetting your focal point. You know, with that, you also add values to really kind of help, you know, pop things out so you can see them. Try placing things slightly off center. You know, it can be on the thirds, but they don't actually have to be center. You know, there's reasons when you want to put things in the center. Usually when you want to command attention, there's usually someone of importance and so forth. But there's more interest when things are asymmetrically placed. Consider scale. You know, scale can imply grandeur, open skies. It can also imply insignificance and that you're just, you know, you're really small in a big world. It all depends on the context of what the scene is. Also consider points of view for intimacy. If your hero is a small character, everything is going to be told from that character's point of view, usually low to the ground. If somebody is up in a higher position looking down, you're gonna see those vantage points from up above. Basic things, avoid tangents. Tangents are just anytime two elements or more are touching. You know, when the edges are touching. When the edges are touching, they without you know, what they do is unintentionally they create interest. You know, they create a focal point. So what you want to do is either overlap the elements or separate them. So when you're trying to do certain moments or certain angles, move the camera around. Have that liberty to move the camera around to look at different positions and tell stories from different points of view. Over the shoulder of one of your heroes, you know, you can choose a hero shot. You can use shadows and so forth to imply, you know, the shadows can imply the, you know, their situation, that it's not so good. Shadows growing over the face. They're in darkness. Maybe the darkness can imply that they're hiding or that they're somehow, they're in a dire predicament and so forth. It all depends, but just have the liberty to move the camera around, be loose, explore. So when doing a story moment, what you're doing is you want to show the adventure, you want to show a journey, you want to capture the emotion of the scene or situation. You're also showing the possibilities, and again, you're showing a point of view. These are great examples of certain story moments. This was done by my good friend Armand Baltazar for Cars 2. I saw this and I'm like, oh my God, you know, Armand's just so great. He can just simply design things and just tell a story. Really nice. Again, I showed Eric Martin's work. This is some examples he did when he took a trip to Ireland. It's a small character that he did of a mouse traveling in different areas that were inspired to him by his trip in Ireland. But again, he's, you know, it's like a montage of a travel, and throughout it, you feel things. You know, the shaft of sunlight can suggest hopefulness. And here he is, he's showing information of, looks like a motif of maybe a little mouse character, perhaps. Maybe there's a little mythology in here. Here the sun's going down. You know, everything's dropping in this kind of shadow, but you see a glint of light near the hero. And then information where he's in a dark cave, but you know, he turns on a torch, and what's the information is being exposed is these carvings. It looks like there's, again, mythology, this old warrior from beyond. So really nice, beautiful. These are my takes. I have a cat character that I'm doing, but I had him traveling through Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. So I was just jotting down really quickly ideas that I had in mind. So you can see they're very rough, but I'm just using shapes and I'm carving out the character and I'm putting him, you know, in light against dark, dark over light. I'm trying to just simplify what I see and trying to create depth. And I'm actually trying to heighten his performance, what he's feeling in the scene. These are examples that Reggio Losel did for Mulan. Really nice, beautiful. Something Paul Felix did when he was designing tower for the Aladdin TV series. Again, he's a designer and he's designing the tower, but he's designing with story in mind. So, he's placing, he's creating little thumbnails of what's to happen leading up to when the character is let off, when Aladdin is let off to the tower to be beheaded. It's grim, but he's using this as an opportunity to showcase storytelling. This is Paul stuff. Some of the thumbnails he did for Mulan. Really beautiful. Nice. This is my earlier take that I did when I started Cars 2. I'm not a car guy, but I knew how to compose and so forth. So this is like one of the first drawings I did when I started Cars 2. I was trying to, figure out the world of cars and so forth. But I kind of, what I did was I kind of just relied back on what I knew as compositionally. So I kind of figured out like, well, what are the points of view we're going to see as a car as it goes through its journey? So I was looking at wide shots, elevation changes, maybe the driver's point of view, low angle, zigzag. So here I am using composition to help imply the point of view of the car as it goes through. And this is my take when I was designing, when I was at Tinkerbell. There was a scene where Peter Pan, it was left out of the movie, so nobody knows about it, of course, but we had Peter Pan in the movie, and Peter Pan was going to go through a cave called the Cave of a Thousand Eyes. And these are my takes on what that could look like. So I'm just showing you pretty much what I would do. Here I am. You can see all the versions I'm trying to do. I letter them so that way when I present to the art director what they are, I'm just trying to create what that would look like. I'm trying to get a sense of light going through, negative space, scale, and so forth. Here I am still trying to figure out and carve out this space. It's an organic space. There's a lot of curves and so forth, but there's a lot of circles. It's 1,000 eyes, so there's going to be a lot of holes around. But here I am. You can see I kind of gridded the information so it'd be easier, hopefully, to dissect the information going through and so forth. And these are just my further studies and so forth. So now I want to show some case studies of some stuff I did so that way you can see my thinking and what had happened. So when I was on Cars 2, I was designing one of the rally races through the Black Forest, through Germany. Unfortunately, it got cut out of the movie, but I wanted to share that process with you. So Cars 2 was based on Cars 1. It was a sequel. And Cars 1 was set out in kind of like the southwest part of the United States, Radiator Springs. It's based on the small southwest towns, really nice. Has a very 40s and 50s old Americana style. So Cars 2 was going to be more, it's going to be more international with the backdrop of spies, espionage, and so forth. It's very, very exotic and grand, and very grand. So what we did was immerse ourselves in the world of cars. So the idea about cars is pretty much, it's kind of like regular, like from far away, it looks like architecture we've seen before, but it's made out of car parts. So what I did was I immersed myself in car parts and I try to figure out, what makes a car part, the forms, and then figure out like, well, can any architectural elements come out of that? Possibly, I don't know. I'm just immersing myself in what that could be. So I looked at spark plugs, engines, emblems, and so forth, just to really kind of get inspired as to that world and pretty much the shapes and elements I might be using. As well, part of the art team took trips to Germany, and they gathered a lot of photo reference. That's Harley Jessup, my art director, awesome art director. I learned a lot from him. Here he is taking pictures of a trail through the Black Forest. So then again, I would have like maybe a better understanding of what the topography looked like, the type of trees, the density of the forest, the type of roads and so forth, what you would see. So here I am informing myself. And Harley and the team took thousands of pictures. So I would look at this, and this would be my library of reference and inspiration to look by. Really nice. Again, made some earlier studies and so forth. Learned how to draw a few cars just to get an idea what that could be, so I could put them in my set. My really quick thumbs, I'm like, okay, what could we see? Maybe there's a car banking across near a tree. Maybe the camera is up as they past the camera. Maybe the camera is low, so they fly over the camera. I'm just trying to find certain areas. And then I started my reference. So what I did was I looked at a lot of villages in the Black Forest, and there's a lot. So I kind of was looking at least 30 villages, and they're all beautiful. And they all had a sense of history, and then the architecture. I was looking at the architecture, how we had the orange tile, that iconic orange tile of these older Bavarian buildings. I also looked at the Fachwerk. The Fachwerk is like the timber work on the facades of the buildings. It's very unique, very storybook. That's all around. And also I was looking at the architecture, how these are all laid out. Old European villages, they all center around usually a church or a government office, and they all, all roads lead to a center. So things have a very round, bending feel. So if you look down a street in an old town village, you're not going to look at things that are straight on. Things have a bend to them. So that I had to take in mind so I can kind of build myself into that world. This is one of the places I use for inspiration. Really nice. And I'm looking at the information. What's the information? Well, the type of architecture, the storefronts, the vegetation, the wire work, even how the ground meets. You can see the ground has cobblestone, and then it meets the sidewalk. They have this gutter system. It's not really a gutter, but there's like a slight dent in the road where waters kind of go by. That was an old way of how they did gutters back in Europe. So really nice. So what I did was I created tableaus, all this information I put in front of me so I can inform myself what this architecture was and what am I seeing, and try and get a feel of that world, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get a feel for that world. And then as well, it's the racing world. So I'm kind of, and it's an off-world race that I'm playing. So I actually, put myself in that world as well. I looked at a lot of off-road racing and so forth. I looked at a lot of this for inspiration, and I'm just kind of looking at this as far as like, well, what do these races do? How close are they? What do you see? So this is what I saw. So really nice, really dynamic. The spectators are really close to the road. There actually really isn't a road. It's a dirt road. It's a dirt path. And then you see how close things can be, very precarious. The trees are near the road. So things are just really, it's a high drama, high activity. And then as well, we looked at old Pixar movies as far as, cars in the scene. So I kind of get an idea of the cinematography. So what I did was I used Maya, and I'm not proficient in Maya. All I know is WER and extrude. And I just know the basic building blocks just to build a basic Lego set of my building. So what I did was I had a village that I used, a small village, and basically I just kind of used one building and I just walked the heck of a lot. I multiplied it and I just walked it out, and I tried to do this iconic shapes of these buildings. And as well as in the center of this, I had like a clock tower, like a store, but it had a very iconic clock tower look. And then I would kind of put out where the spectators would be at. I carved out a road, and I implied a little bit what the mountain shapes would be. Very crude, but again, I'm just playing around, and I'm using the features of Maya, the camera, to move around and get a sense of space. And then on Photoshop, I would take a JPEG, and in Photoshop, I put eyes on it. So yeah, and so nice. And then I would start on paintings. So from there, I would just do really paintings of what I would see on that rally race. So I suggested maybe there's a bank where they come and then they turn and they go toward camera. I painted spectators along the road. There's McQueen flying over. Here's my shot at what the race could be. Maybe they come from a castle up on the hills and they're racing down this path, and they go through a clock tower on the far left, and then they bank toward camera and down. So yeah, I just painted all these. The graphics, we had a graphics artist who did all the graphics as far as like the names of the fuels and so forth. They had already supplied this, and I just kind of pasted them onto my set. But all this kind of really implies like, it has that F1 rally race feel, everything that you would see in a race. This is another view as they're going through the forest. Maybe I have like the news crew in the front. Maybe there was a night race. So I'm adding elements of shadow and lighting and so forth. One of the first things I did for Cars 2 was we had a race that was going to be set in England, and they had a stadium stand where the Queen would be. So this is one of the first things I designed, and this was actually based on reference. Lord's Pavilion in London. Harley Jessup, our production designer, really liked this building, so he said, like, let's use that for inspiration. So I did. So I kind of used the architecture, but I put car parts. You can see the emblems. You can see a little bit of the hoods of the car on certain elements. I had the UK flag. Where the Queen's box is in the center, in that grandstand, that's actually an old lantern from an old car from the UK. So I used all these elements just to help inspire that architecture. So from far away, the rule was it should look like an older, like a regular building, but from up close, you can see the car parts come out. And you can see I added bunting. Bunting is like those little flags, just to suggest like more of a festive feel. And then I added Mater. You can see Mater on the far bottom left for scale. It's always nice when you design at scale, so we have a sense of space and the character to the size of the set. One set I did inside the stadium, Harley said, look at the Indianapolis 500, because he liked the pagodas. The pagodas are those towers in the middle where the staff would be at, and it's right behind the pit crews. So I looked at that and I designed pretty much a version of what that could look like. But I used car parts. So I used like spark plugs, engine parts, and so forth. So they would be more iconic. And I kind of, in the background, I kind of give it a hint of what that race would look like. It would curve around and so forth. So there's the pit crews and so forth. And then this would be my elevation of what those buildings would look like. And again, I'm adding scale. You can see Mater and the Queen on the bottom. So let me give you another case study of what we did for Scoob. So for Scoob, I was going to do Shaggy's bedroom. And so these were the very early designs that we had on Shaggy. It's different now, but these were just earlier takes. So this is what I was given. And I was working with Michael Karinsky, awesome designer. Love working with Mike. And we were trying to do, we were looking at old Scooby cartoons, and we wanted to get a sense of their lighting. Things were carved out in this shadow space. You get shadows and so forth. So we're kind of looking that in mind as far as like how we would carve out spaces in our film. So for reference for Shaggy, the whole idea was, Shaggy present day, he's like in his, late 20s, probably early 30s, maybe. So that means he would be a kid of the 70s. So to reflect that, we looked at a lot of 70s rooms, kids' rooms, to get a sense of that. And you can see I looked at a lot of Brady Bunch to kind of get an idea of what that could look like. Things were dated, but back then they had certain toys, certain elements that kind of reflect that timeline. So what I did a very rough floor plan of what that could look like. Very crude, but this is for me. I'm just trying to get an idea of like, okay, what's this space could be? So you can see there's a hallway, and then on the left, there's the door coming in, and then you see a desk. I indicated where windows might be. That's his bed. And then there's a little closet and so forth. So this is just my very rough take. So I can kind of get an idea space-wise what I would work with. Then I got more information. So, we started adding maybe possibilities of what could be in the room. And then as far as night, we were thinking like, okay, let's do it at night. So, Shaggy's kind of a scaredy cat. So, I was going to do this at night. So that way I could take advantage of like light and also the lighting inside. So maybe he has a night light that you see. So I looked at that for reference. And then I just started doing my first stabs. So this is my first quick drawings that I would do as far as carving out the space. So there, you can tell I changed the back. So maybe there's a nook on the back wall. So I added a nook. I would change the foreground elements. And then I started applying a little bit of color. Lighting. and so forth. And then the whole idea was if you use the nightlight, during the day, it's nothing. Maybe up above you see on shelves, you need toys and so forth. But at night with the nightlight on, you have, strong uplight and you can have, you can play with shadows and lighting and silhouettes. That was the whole idea. And also we were thinking like, okay, things during the day, maybe you have a stack of toys and so forth, but if you have a blanket on them and it's dark, you can play with elements of, what Shaggy might imagine. So going back to this, I took further stabs. I started dressing the room with what it could be in and so forth. Started playing the light. And then here's another take on the room. I'm starting to get more feedback from Mike as far as what he wants to see and the information. So I go back to more information, and we're kind of thinking like, okay, he's going to be slightly older, so he's not going to be a little kid, but he's slightly older, like a tween, like maybe he's 12 or 13. But now we're going to dress it so maybe there's more modern elements into it, like maybe there's an old computer, maybe he has like an old game board. And so forth. And also he's messy, he's kind of like, he's not the most tidy kid. So I said, again, I started doing more reference tableaus to inform myself of what that could be, types of chairs, furniture, how he would create a bookshelf. Maybe it wasn't a bought bookshelf. Maybe it's something like what college kids would do, get mason bricks and boards and you make your own bookshelf. And then I started looking as far as like, well, what does untidy look like? So I got a lot of reference on that. So I went back to this and started dressing other sides of the room. Again, this is just quick and dirty, but I'm just throwing stuff down. But everything is adhering to perspective. I'm applying, you can see toy chests and bed footprint. So that way, I'm applying footprints so I know where things are laying down. I'm just really quick and dirty laying the information. And again, I'm updating the floor plan because as things change, you want to update them. I'm also looking at what that could look like. We've seen this. And now from there, I can start kind of painting up the room. So once I do that, then I can start refining the shapes and the information. So this is what I did. This is the daylight perhaps, and now we're adding some lighting, and now I'm creating negative spaces where, carving out where that light would be hitting certain elements. I'm adding foreground elements as well. This is another angle. I added scale. That's older Shaggy and younger Shaggy, just to get a sense of scale. Taking him out. Let's see. Putting foreground elements in, lighting, night lights. Then maybe going back and kind of refining the details of his room. And again, I'm going back to reference, so everything is grounded. So it's not really hyper real, but it's believable, So here's his area. He's got an old Commodore, perhaps, one of those old remote controls, old speakers, everything. And then from there, I could work on elevation studies as far as how his room, the walls are going to be looking at like. Okay, so with that, I also wanted to share an exercise. If folks wanted to kind of do an exercise on something they can take with them. Well, I've given my students in the past, I call it the Search for the Treasure of San Roberto assignment, also known as the Hamlin assignment. And I'll explain why. Now, say you're a young visual development artist, or you want to do visual development, or you're a character designer, or you want to be a character designer, and you have no project to do this. You can always change it up. But if you need an assignment or you need an exercise, do this. So here's the pitch. I'll read it with you. Hamlin McGee is an adventurer at heart. He's a professor of archaeology at Stewart's University in New York. When he's not teaching, he goes on adventures with his loyal and book-smart companion, Arthur Tortugas, in search of treasures and lost ruins, in hopes of preserving them for education and prosperity. A distress call from a colleague leads them toward a far-off adventure in search of the treasure of San Roberto in a fictitious jungle of South America. They travel far, escaping crocodile-infested rivers, dangerous waterfalls, and treacherous jungles to make their way to the secluded and hidden empire of San Roberto. There they hope to safeguard the important and magical stone statue of a lost civilization of the Changuitos before the evil and nefarious colleague, Dr. William Weaselstone, gets his hands on it. They realize it's too late, and Weaselstone has activated the curse to animate monkey-like zombies to wreak havoc on the village and soon the world. So basically, that's the pitch. That's kind of, in the shortest terms, what the story could be. So it's kind of my take on pretty much like Indiana Jones meets Pirates of the Caribbean. And your mission is to create the characters and the world that envisions and inspires this setup of Hamlin and his journey, his trek. Now, think in terms of the spirit of Indiana Jones, The Princess Bride, Pirates of the Caribbean, but this is all with animals, okay? Now, I want you to have fun, bring a sense of adventure, magic, awe, and some danger. Now, here's some inspiration for you. So these are just clips I got from different movies. So I want you to get inspired so you can use this as a launch point. Here are the characters. I've already designed Hamlin, but this is Hamlin. You know, he's in mid-20s, he's adventurous, he's brave, yet he's stubborn. Okay, as far as the style and direction, think in terms of like seeing in Zootopia and Robin Hood. These are animals that walk on twos, they have clothes and they talk. They're anthropomorphic, and they talk, but it's all animals. Draw inspiration from Rescue Rangers and DuckTales. Okay, as far as the style and direction for the sets and so forth, think of they can be more detailed, but they have to be appealing and stylized. And these are just really great examples of what you can use that for inspiration. Maybe for interiors as well. Okay, as far as locations, you're to design Hamlin's office. This is the exterior of one of the buildings in the school, and inside this building is his office, and it's based on Indiana Jones' office that he used in the movie. So it's basically a tight space that it's kind of like an afterthought. It's not really meant to be his office. This was just kind of a room that he kind of used for his office. So everything has this kind of makeshift kind of style. Everything should address who he is. You know, he's an adventurer, he's a scientist, an archaeologist. So use this as inspiration. There should be racks of artifacts on there, maps, books, maybe a telescope. What you want to do is dress this in the time frame that Indiana Jones was in. You know, think of the 30s and 40s. So you can use that technology. So look at the, look at the fans, the chairs, the type of equipment, and so forth. Maybe add a window. Think of the door and the entrance, how he's going to come in. Same thing for the jungle. When you're looking at the jungle, these are just inspirations for the jungle. Think of ruins. When he goes into the ruins, think of the overgrowth and think of how the topography is laid out. Maybe the roots have overtaken, so stones that were on the courtyard have been tossed and are bending. Maybe there's vines that are growing everywhere. This should, quick reads for ruins, overgrowth. So what you want to do is apply that feeling into your sketches. And these are just great studies and inspirations for what that could be. Okay, so here's your assignment as far as deliverables. Okay, so you have 8 characters. I've already kind of gave you Hamlin, but if you're a character designer, maybe redesign Hamlin. Maybe Hamlin doesn't have to be a pig. Maybe it can be a cat or a dog. Who knows? There's Tortugas, there's Weaselstone, there's the bad guy. Design 2 zombie monkeys because in the ruins they come across zombies. So maybe design two zombies. Maybe there's 3 students, again, animals, students that are walking around. Include exploratory designs, final designs, a lineup, and expression of the 3 of the characters. As far as sets, what you want to do is design Hamlin's office, the interior. Maybe some jungle exteriors and vegetation. Show the journey, but put your characters in them. And maybe they're on a raft, on a boat going down through the jungle. Maybe they're passing these sculptures. Maybe they're going under a tree. Maybe they're trekking and walking through near a waterfall. Think of the possibilities. Don't hold yourself back. You have to deliver this. Say you're delivering this to Steven Spielberg, and you need to wow him. Think about what you can do to wow him. Okay. And see, as far as sets, work in a 1.85 film ratio. Work totally in values in black and white. Don't work in color just yet. Try and underscore the values first. And I said deliverables. Try and do this in 4 weeks. I don't want you to do the characters and the environments in 4 weeks. No, choose one Like do characters and do those in 4 weeks, and do environments in 4 weeks. You know, you don't have to do both, but if you need something, just do one of them. But try and do it in 4 weeks. 4 weeks, I gave 4 weeks because I wanted to mimic something that you would do in a real life situation. You know, when we work in studios, we have to, you know, we work in tight frame, we have deadlines. So I want you to try and mimic what that could be. So it burns a fire in your butt. So you're used to thinking fast, committing, and getting used to that schedule. When you design ideas, when you're designing Hamlin's office, it's a small, narrow space. So maybe the camera could be from the door looking in, or maybe the door is on the side and you're looking through. And think about placement about his office. Again, be inspired by the reference information. His office should be cluttered, covered with artifacts, maps, props from that era. You need to sell that feeling. Okay, now say for example, in a real scenario situation, you might be given a sketch from the director. Maybe the director doesn't draw and he gives you this and he says, well, I want a jungle setting that has your characters working in this jungle. So he's kind of does this scribble. It's like, well, it should feel really, you know, the dense and so forth. So that's the feeling he's trying to give you. So basically you can borrow from his sketch, but make it better. You know, he's giving you what he wants, what he or she wants. So your job is to like, okay, that's the feeling I have to try and imply, go for it. The jungle should be lush and rich. You can indicate adventure or mystery and so forth. Use elements, foreground, midground, background, and so forth. You know, maybe the director, again, he has a sketch of the ruins. You know, he's saying like, well, these characters, Hamlin and Tortugas, are going to be approaching the ruins. And there's this opening. And there should be stuff in the foreground, and it should be rich and lush. So maybe this is what he gives you, but you're like, okay, take it to the next step. That's what he gives you. That's the information he wants. Now it's up to you to deliver something wow and beautiful and clear and give all this information. Okay, so again, 4 weeks, maybe use the 4th week to get photo reference, build tableaus, start doing exploratory thumbs and so forth, start considering the style. Your 2nd week, start establishing roughs for your sets. In your 3rd week, continue, but start honing in the details. Start beginning to paint with values once you have something kind of locked that you're happy with. And then use your last week to finish your paintings and get ready for presentation. Okay. Usually for Real Studio, we have check-ins. So you don't have check-ins because you guys are doing this on their own. But in a Real Studio setting, what we would do is we would be launched, say, on Monday, and then we would show our work on a Friday. But between that time, our art director would come in and they would check in, maybe every other day, maybe once a day, just to see the direction that we're going in. So that way your art director, he or she is clued in on the direction you're taking. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, work loose and small, and good luck. So that is just for folks who need an idea. That could be a suggestion to do. So before I go, I just wanted to, let's see, what time is it here? Yeah, I have about 20 minutes. So before I go, I just want to share things to think about so you guys can move on. Embrace mistakes. Don't be scared to make mistakes. I know a lot of people say like, oh, it's not perfect and stuff like that. I don't think there's no such thing as perfect. You know, you just take stabs at it. But you know, embrace the mistakes, but they're not really mistakes. They're just kind of like you're thinking with a pencil. So you're just trying to get this down. You're trying to throw it, the ideas that are in your head onto paper, and you're just trying to craft and sculpt something. So there's no such thing as mistakes. It's just everything is always a work in progress. Everything is evolving, but you need to start somewhere. So don't worry about making mistakes. There's no such thing. It's just doing the work. There's no absolutes. Don't think of it as like, oh, it's right, not right, perfect, not perfect. No, think of things as weaker or stronger. Weaker things are just things that can be made stronger. Stronger is just like you're feeling it. Everything we do in art, it's all emotional. So we're kind of responding to like what we feel and like, oh yeah, I get it, the information. So think in terms like that. You know, don't think of things as absolutes like, oh, it has to be just this one answer. No. Movie making, filmmaking, it's all based on emotion and gut feeling. And, you know, think in terms of weaker and stronger. And yeah, that'll kind of help hopefully free yourself. Stay loose. Again, it's not about beautiful sketches at this time. You know, you're going to work toward a beautiful sketch. Right now, we're working with strong ideas. Get the strong ideas out. Think about composition, the possibilities of carving of space and composition and so forth. Explore big shapes first. Compose toward a focal point. Oh, thanks, babe. Avoid details at this time. Working with big statements, big shapes, and then work with little shapes underneath. Let's see. Think of the strength of the sketch. A sketch should be simple. Think about the clarity of action, the idea and the concept. Establish a focal point, a sense of tone emotionally. Sketch with story in mind. Sketch with filmic terms. Utilize foreground elements, sense of depth, clarity of shapes, accents of detail. Draw with camera in mind, POVs. Draw within film ratios. Get the information you need. Ask questions. Get reference. You want to ask yourself, where are we? When are we? Who are your players? Are they good? Are they bad? What part of your story are you in? Do we have context as far as where the story's in? Think of the mood. Determine the needs of the story first, and then add the wants. Okay, here's some great examples to look at as far as looseness and richness. So in the beginning, try and strive for this. It's not about pretty pictures right now. These are pretty. These are great. These are beautiful. But right now, it's not about fine tuning something. No, throw it down first and think of the other options. I'm just going to quickly go through these. Think of the camera angles. Think of the points of view. Move the camera around. These are beautifully done. These are Wouter Tulip's beautiful sketches. Love Wouter's work. He's awesome. Paul Felix stuff. These are studies, his sketches. Again, he's really thumbnailing really loose. He's kind of getting a sense of lighting and space and so forth. These are beautiful Ian Worrell sketches that he did for Gravity Falls. Here he's carving a space. He's created on the upper left a simple floor plan. Know the space. Know, because you're kind of an architect for things that aren't going to physically be built, but we should get a sense of what's happening where and so forth. Really nice. Beautiful. So that's it. So let me stop sharing and then I will do that. So yeah, basically I just shared just really quick an overview of observations I've seen and hopefully ideas to consider and so forth. One last thing before I leave, as far as like working for a studio, I would tell people try and work smart. You always hear like working hard, but we always work hard. Everybody works hard, but try and work smart. What I mean by working smart is don't overkill yourself. Work smart so that way you can function and you're not killing yourself and burning out. For example, say at the beginning stage of an assignment, say you have to design a set. Rather than design like 20 sets or 20 thumbnails and so forth, do like 6. The thing is, within that 6, vary the range. Maybe there's 2 that are safe and kind of exactly what the director wants, what he or she wants, or maybe one can be more broad and more dynamic, and maybe one is maybe more dynamic in a certain way. The thing is, with that, you can fulfill that within the 8 hours and not overkill yourself. And then go to the director, he or she will say like, okay, I like this, I don't like that, and then you can hone in your target without killing yourself. The reason is you don't want to overwork. You can pay for 8 hours, so you don't want to work more than 8 hours. You want to do your best to work smartly within the 8 hours and still deliver what you need. Ideally, you want to do that with reference first. Put your reference up first and let your director let he or she like what they respond to. And then once you have an idea of what they respond to, then from there you can start doing your thumbnails and so forth. You just don't want to burn out. This is think of this as you kind of heard this. It's like it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Yeah, you're in it for the long haul. So you want to like pace yourself and work smart. You don't want to overwork because you're human. It's easy to burn out in this. And also it's a very stressful gig. So we already have enough stress in our lives. So you want to just try and lessen the stress as much as possible. And don't worry about it. It's going to be good, but don't work more than you have to. I know some studios take advantage of that. They like young guns, especially young guns who know they're going to stay at their desk for 14 or 18 hours to work. But guess what? You're only paid 8, so you're getting free work. Don't do that. You know, work smart. Work within the 8 hours. Train yourself to work within a certain time frame, so you can still deliver. And if you're going to work more than that, do it for your own work. Don't do it for the studios. You know, because at the end of the day, you don't own that. They do. You know, so if you're gonna turn the engine, do it for you. So that way you own it, and it opens opportunities for you later on. So, so I think that's it. It's about I still got about 15 minutes. So what I can do is I'll leave it for Q&A. So I have some questions here. I'm gonna open up my phone. Okay. So some of the questions. Some people keep asking if the video is going to be on YouTube after and for how long. Yes, it'll be on. I'll leave it on YouTube for like 2 months, and then I may take it down because what I may do is I'm gonna probably do a lot more of these, but I'm gonna refine them a lot more. I'm gonna hopefully up the production design, and that way it's more concise and more clear. But yeah, for the time being, for the next 2 months, they'll be up. So Mina Markovic, where can we see the Story Moments video? It's it should be up. I left a link on my Facebook. If you go to my Facebook profile, I left a link. It's called Story Moments and stuff. So it's up there. So yeah, Mina. So if you check it out, it should be there. Helen Lung says, what books are recommended for background design? I can't really recommend any books. The books I looked at were art of books. So I looked at an art of book and I would like look at what they did. And that was my first impression. What I usually look at are, I go online and I look at artwork, but I also get inspired by art, you know, the online work that I've seen in movies, and I look at that. That's what I look for inspiration. I don't really have a book offhand that I can recommend. If I do, I'll put it on my Facebook post. But yeah, at the time, I don't really have specific books to recommend. See, Joseph Owen says, can we download these videos to refer to for personal use? You can, but just don't share. I mean, I did this as a service, you know, as more of an education for you guys. So yeah, just don't abuse it. Just, you know, use it for educational purposes and so forth. So yeah. Nikki, I wonder how long each of these phases in his process takes. Cars, panels of the buildings. You know, it depends. I think it all depends on the assignment, but usually they give you about 2 to 3 weeks to work on a set. When I say a set, it's like maybe an interior, maybe an exterior of a location. So say you're doing the inside, say you're doing the exterior of a building, they might give you 2 weeks to do that. So you have 1 week to do the reference and the concept, and at the end of that week on a Friday, you do an art review, you sell it. And if the director, if he or she likes it, they'll have notes, and then you move on and you spend the second week refining it or clarifying those notes and doing another version and so forth. And then, you know, sometimes it might be longer. Then, you know, you're working to finish the design on however long the schedule allows you to do it. Let's see. Charlotte says, what is the difference between environments and sets? Nothing really. They're just different ways of calling the same thing. I mean, a set can be an environment can be a set. So overall, they're the same thing. They're just locations for characters to go through, to respond against, backdrops. Kieran asked, where do we send these? You don't send them, you just do them. I can't look at them. I don't have the time or space to look at these because I'm busy. But I just gave these assignments for you guys to do on your own, for something to do. Because I know there's students who say like, well, what do I do? What do I do? Or they've done stuff, but they want something new. These are just exercises for you to do on your own. So there's nowhere to send them. Don't send them to me because quite honestly, I don't have the bandwidth or the time to look at them. But I did want to share the exercise with you based on what you would probably be doing in real life. So yeah, Nikki, just go through the process and the experience and just go for it. Let's see. I might have missed some. Okay. So Kangmin Lim says, do you offer portfolio review for aspiring artists by any chance? I have, but not at the moment because I'm kind of swamped with projects, personal projects. Plus, I do have a small group of folks that I mentor right now, but I can't take any more on, unfortunately. But I mentioned in another presentation that I will be planning to do stuff for schoolism, as far as like in a workshop or a class. I'm also teaching at the Animation Collaborative up here in Emeryville in the Bay Area. We've already started a semester, but I'm hoping to do more classes with them later. So, but nothing now. I just right now, unfortunately, I'm just swamped. So let's see. Gautam Kumar says, can anyone tell him to unlist this P, how to watch the video before it gets taken down? Well, I'm going to leave it up. So what's going to happen is after this video finishes, I think there's some time lapse because it processes the video. And I think probably an hour or 2 hours, several hours later, you can replay it. Okay, Artillery 1 says, what is the best way to learn composition? Best way to learn composition is basically consider certain things in your space. You know, what are you designing? Think of points of view. What's your focal point? Think of things that could frame your focal point. The thing is, you want to really obscure a focal point because we want to see your focal point. That's the best way. I mean, in a nutshell, that's the best way to kind of compose. And then just take certain variations of it. Maybe you compose one angle and then you compose another angle. Maybe change up the height of the camera. Maybe it's a lower angle, maybe eye level, maybe slightly above eye level. So just go through that exercise of learning, being a cinematographer and finding out what that spot is. Maybe do like 5 versions. And then from there, ask yourself, maybe which one's the strongest, which one kind of responds to you. Kayleen says, where can we find you online? You can find me, let's see, good question. I will go ahead and I will share screen, my contact info. So if you bear with me, I will go ahead and open up that information. Let's see, open. I'm sorry. Let's see, where's my cat? Okay, here's my contact information. That's my Instagram. I'm Java John. You can find me on Facebook if you put in my name, and if you put in like maybe art or artist, you'll most likely find me. And I have a Carbon Made website, so that's where you can find me. That's my contact info. So with that, let me stop sharing so you guys can see me again. Okay. And so we got about 5 more minutes, then I need to go. So Zedric says, there are so many steps when creating an emotional composition that it's hard to keep a track of all the things to do. Do you have any tips on how not to get overwhelmed with so many choices? Well, basically the emotion should be maybe 1 or 2 choices. Like, is it scary? Is this a happy set? So just maybe narrow down the emotion you're trying to do. It's going to be weird if you have like more than 1 emotion because you can have competing things happening. It's going to maybe, it might be ambiguous to the viewer. It's usually 1 or 2 feelings you're trying to convey. Sometimes they're not even a feeling. Maybe it's just more informational, like, oh, this is just an office. But inside the office is like, well, what kind of office is it? Are they happy working there? And so forth. Sometimes you want to be careful. You want to over-inform, so that way whatever's in the set is taking too much information based on your character. These are just backdrops, but there's some cases where there's certain things in the scene that you want to highlight or that are iconic that draw attention to. But it's a balance because, you know, what we're seeing is a story being told by characters as they walk through scenes and sets. So there should be a nice balance. So it's about informing what the set is in context to the story and the situation, to your character, but there's a balance where you don't want to have it create too much attention, so it takes away. So it's that narrow spot. But yeah, it's usually just maybe 1 feeling that's being, portrayed in the scene. So it shouldn't be a lot. You're just trying to inform and kind of give an idea of what's happening mood-wise. So Octavio says, how do you get an opportunity to work on the film industry? Well, portfolio. Got to get a portfolio, send it, get a response. That's how you get your foot in. It's all about basically what you do is start doing good work. That's how you get the response. Think of yourselves as them. If you're a recruiter and you have a film and you already have a budget and you want this film to be good, what do you do to look for the artist? Well, you probably look on social media, or you look on blogs, or usually have a portal where people submit their work and so forth. But more than that, you're responding to good work. So basically the first step is do good solid work. So I would say in a portfolio, do like maybe 3 stories. So basically one story could be the Hamlet story, and do several sets from the Hamlet story, and then do several sets from another story. And then the third could be several sets from another story. The whole idea is like you're trying to convey to them that you already have production work and that you can create more than one set within a story. So it shows contrast. This is a happy place in this story. This is a sad place in this story. This is a scary place in this story, and so forth. What you're trying to do is you're trying to create like an art book of your pieces. And also you're trying to showcase that you can work in the bandwidth that's needed to fulfill the job and so forth. So start from there, and then afterwards, share your work on social media. Make sure it's organized, user friendly. Reach out to studios through their portals and so forth. That's the best way. So yeah. So let's see. Do you think, Jing Jing Z says, do you think students should think about honing their painting skills before thinking about storytelling, or vice versa? Yeah, I think it'd be nice to hone your painting skills, because that way, once you have that tool, then you can start practicing them against storytelling and so forth. It could be vice versa. I mean, painting skills is needed for storytelling, so you can do that either before or after. So I wouldn't say I think what's ever comfortable to you. But yeah, just take a step as far as storytelling. Don't worry about making mistakes. It's all part of the process. We're not magicians. We're not wizards. We're humans. And just like this is a typical Monday for me. Say on Monday I go to work, I get launched on an assignment, and they say you're going to be working on this set where this character goes in the beginning of the store and has all these things on the walls, and there's a cashier in the back, and he walks, and then he's going to meet somebody and so forth. So I'm getting all this information, and sometimes it might be information I'm unaware of or I've never drawn before, and I'm inside my head, I'm going like, oh my gosh, what? I can't do that. That's what happens inside. I don't say it outside. That's what happens inside. That's my immediate like, oh my gosh. Why do I say that? Because I've never drawn it before. And just like anything else, anything we've never really drawn before, there's a sense of like, how am I going to do it? But then just like anything else, like I've done for the last 20 years, what happens is that's your initial take, and then you go through the process. What's the process? Find out what the story is. What do you have to do? What are the needs? Do your reference, get familiar with this world, look at the observations, start looking at a sense of style, and then you just start taking stabs at it, baby steps, and you go for it. And that's how you do it. I mean, that's kind of, the way to go. There's no secret, there's no shortcuts. That's it. And you just keep doing that. So start with assignments. I gave you the Hamlet assignment. Maybe start working from fairy tales. Do like Goldilocks and Three Bears. Design the bear's house. Old Lady in the Shoe. Design the old lady's shoe. Let's see, the Three Little Pigs. You got 3 houses there. Maybe you design the wolf's house. Who knows? But anyway, think of existing stories that you know, and then take your stabs at designing the sets. And do exteriors and interiors. Don't just do interiors. Do both, because in a job you have to do both. So just start now and go for it. So let's see. So I think that's it. And I want to thank my good friend and my amica and my mentee Gaia Rujanini for helping me get the questions. Thank you, Gaia. Thank you so much. So with that, it's 12 o'clock. I need to go, but this will be up for like the next 2 months, and then I'll let folks know when I'm taking it down. But anyway, I hope that helps. I just want to throw out some quick information for you guys to consider, to think about, and so forth. So with that, have fun, stay engaged, stay inspired, Don't be scared. Just go for it. It'll all be all right. So I wish you guys all the best and have a great Lightbox and a great weekend. Bye. And meeting.